Welcome back, wrestling fans, to the Mount Rushmore Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 22. Another surprise episode of kind of more of our homegrown content. We'll be doing our men's and women's Mount Rushmore for current superstars, so different than our all-time superstars. We do have a guest with us, so Dylan, if you want to introduce yourself, I'll throw it to you first. Uh,
Sure, yeah.
what do you like about wrestling? What drew you to wrestling? And who are some of your favorites right now?
So yeah, I'm Dylan. Yeah, I've been a wrestling fan. So I'm 29. I'm probably since I was 7 years old, 6 years old. Um, Big thing that got me into wrestling was, well, I think maybe it's Sean. I'm a big Hardy Boys guy. That's what got me into it. I'm much like everybody our age, right? But I'm a big Hardy Boys guy, so that got me into it a little bit. I remember as a kid getting the first Hardy Boys like Twist of Fate DVD as like my ninth birthday gift, and it
Hell
was the
yeah.
coolest thing
That's what I'm
ever.
talking about.
And yeah, so ever since then, I've been a big wrestling guy. I love wrestling. Lost up a little bit of it in like the 2008 high school ish time of my life, I think, and then post high school and especially as of like AEW and stuff like that's picked up, I've really gotten back into it. So yeah, current day wrestlers, I would have to say, to try and be like not super AEW mark guy. I guess I could start with a WWE guy, and so I've always really liked Seth Rollins, and John Moxley is probably my favorite wrestler like currently going today, and he's a Dean Ambrose or John Moxley. And then I'm a big Elite guy, so that's my big thing that follows me for wrestling now is watching all their content and absorbing all that.
Yeah, we're definitely Moxley over Ambrose people here.
Yeah.
I think already what he's done as Moxley has surpassed. Don't get me wrong, the Shield was great, but for me personally, I think everything he's done as Moxley has been way better than Ambrose, and I think
Yeah,
he would say that
AEW
too.
runs
To
been
be
awesome.
quite frank, yeah, no more lunatic fringe, no more lunatics in my corner. So what we'll do, we'll go to Chris because he has the on this day today, and then we're gonna jump into some news, and that'll set up the day for us. So, Chris, to you.
Yeah, all right, buckle up. On this day, we have it's a TNA Impact episode. Actually, we don't talk about Impact too much, so figured I'd throw this one in there. There
Very
was only
cool.
3 matches on that episode. The first match was Samoa Joe defeating Christopher Daniels for the X Division Championship. Those
That was
guys
probably
used to put
good.
on bangers back in the day. Christopher Daniels was the champion, so he actually lost the title on a regular
Oh wow.
episode of Impact. The second match was America's Most Wanted versus Team 3D in a street fight, and it ended in a no contest. So picture that, a street fight ending in a no contest.
Interesting.
Doesn't make much sense to me. And then the main event of the night, which is actually 2 guys who have been in the headlines a little bit lately, was Sting. The promo he cut last night was phenomenal. And then he defeated Eric Young, actually. So we found out that Eric Young's been signed
Ah,
to WWE, and he's been nowhere to be found.
for
So
6 months.
that was the main event. It was the 7.5 minute match. Not much of a main event, but 2 guys who are still doing it to this day.
What AMW was a fantastic tag team. They ran Impact for years and years and years, and I think extensions of them. So someone ended up doing. What did they ended up doing? Beer Money with one of those people as well.
They
I
ended up
forget who
doing
it
Beer Money.
was.
Yeah, it was James Storm and Bobby Roode, I think.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, they had a lot of history with tag teams back then. So that was super super cool. So let's jump into some news. So, the big thing right off the bat over the past few hours, and we've kind of already mentioned it a little bit, is CM Punk seems to be creeping his way back to the AEW ranks, and duly noted and duly needed, in my opinion. We'll see what these guys have to say, but CM Punk, I think he's going to be back and ready to go. It seems like Chris Jericho is going to have a sit down with him to see if they can work together. Listen, I love Chris Jericho, but Punk is best for business right now, and I think that'll help them. Don't get me wrong; it's not like Punk went in and was like the best wrestler in the company either. Like I don't think he's at that stage in his career that he's putting on banger matches. Don't get me wrong; his matches were good, but he's there to elevate the young talent and make them look even better than they are, and his name will do that for them. So what do you guys think about Punk? Excited? Not so excited? Dylan, let's go to you first. Dylan's gonna be our
I,
new
I'm
AEW Mark, by the way. So
I think like for the business side of it, I think I was thinking about this over the last couple weeks because their ratings have been like 800,000 ish,
mhm.
which is a little bit lower. I'd say that he is probably guaranteed money like 150,000 viewers every week. He puts them over 1 million every week. So I think it's cool, good for business if he plays ball with everybody. I think that's cool. I've always liked CM Punk. I marked out super hard when he came out. I forget what pay-per-view with the old Ring of Honor stuff, and
Yeah.
Miseria, Canteria, whatever. So I used to love that stuff. So yeah, man, I think it's cool. I think it's cool. Welcome back, if possible, if it's happening.
Yeah, on the business side of things, I absolutely love it. He's definitely going to generate, in my opinion, about 150,000 as well. And on the flip side, I do think that if he goes back to his old ways and becomes like a cancer to the locker room, it's going to do more harm than good. In my opinion, I think him and Jericho will have a sit down. They will work it out. I do think though that the Elite will no longer work with him. That'll probably be the only thing. It's gonna be a situation where Elite will probably do their thing, CM Punk will do theirs. Hopefully they'll work together at some point, but at this stage, I might think that's just gonna kind of be on hold for a little bit. But I do anticipate that CM Punk will be at Wembley Stadium, and then maybe we'll get a couple other surprises as well along the way.
Yeah, I was thinking, that all those guys are professionals. So at the end of the day, they want AEW to succeed. So let's take CM Punk back. Let's put on some great promos with him, some great matches, including the Elite. I don't think this is a situation where they're going to restructure a contract and have a clause where he doesn't face certain guys because it could turn real. And honestly, I don't know if him and Chris Jericho will even sit down and have a conversation and squash it at this point. I think those two guys are so like hard headed, and I think that they just won't bring it up. And I think they will do what's best for business and still work together at the end of the day. But they don't need to have a sit down conversation to squash the beef per se. They're both grown men at this point. They can get over it.
What's interesting is I think, contrary to what Sean said, I think if Tony Khan is smart, that's the match that they make for Wembley Stadium is the Elite against CM Punk and FTR. If they really want the blow the ratings, that's the match that's probably going to do it for them, to be honest. And then
if those guys want to do business,
yeah, figuring out who MJF faces in that pay-per-view is very important as well. But yeah, I'm all on board for them bringing back Punk. Also, so another AEW thing in the news. So FTR did sign. They did come out and say, I think it was on Dax's podcast, that he basically confirmed 4-year deal. And it seems like they're going to retire after the 4-year deal. I'm not too sure about that, but we'll take that in stride. But 4 years is still a long time, so they have a decent amount of time left in the deal. It does go by fast, but so that's some more AEW news. The other couple of things I want to mention quickly, the draft seems to be set for May 8th. The episode of, I believe it's Raw on May 8th is when they're potentially having the draft. So we will see what happens. I know what's going to happen in the next few weeks. The last two things have to do with Seth Rollins. So I'm very intrigued. I posed this question on our notes section, and we talked about this yesterday, and talking about Seth going to AEW. But does WWE have a Seth Rollins problem? When I ask that question, it seems like Seth Rollins is always the guy that seemingly has taken the back seat, no matter what position he's held in this company. Because Roman Reigns is around, maybe it's someone else. It's Cody that comes back. It seems like Seth Rollins, for the past few years, has put on nothing but fantastic main event quality work, but is still, it seems like on the back end, not treated as the main event star that he is, right? So it seems like his booking always ends up getting him, he's so over, and WWE has not, he hasn't had a championship in a long time in terms of like a main event title. So I want to pose the question for, if you're WWE, do you have a Seth Rollins problem? Like, it's obviously it's a good problem to have, of course, but it seems like eventually, you have to think, is he going to get unhappy with always being, it seemed like he already is with the Cody stuff backstage and a few other things that have happened. So I just posed the question, what are we thinking about Seth Rollins right now?
I personally think that it's not so much a Seth Rollins problem. I think it's more a Roman Reigns problem, to be honest, with him keeping both of those championships, captive at this point. I mean, he's held one of them for over 3 years now, basically, and the other one he's had for over a year now. And I think more opportunities would arise for people like him, for McIntyre, Kevin Owens, even for the past 3 years, if those titles are split on two separate shows. I think Seth Rollins easily would have had a championship run at this point if Roman didn't have both titles, and Cody probably would have beat Seth Rollins for one of them at this point. So that's my personal opinion. I don't think that Seth Rollins is going to get unhappy and jump ship. I think him and Becky Lynch are both such a power couple, and I know I've seen them on podcasts separately, both airing out certain problems that they had over the year of 2022, and I just think it's more of a booking thing at this point. I don't think it's anything else other than they need to get two separate championships on two separate shows, and Seth Rollins will definitely have one of them again at some point.
Yeah, I also think it's a Roman Reigns issue because of the fact that it's kind of like a comparison to like a Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan type scenario where Roman Reigns is Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen is like right on that level, but just not as like popular as Roman because Roman obviously is the biggest thing in WWE right now. I think obviously Seth has proven that like he has no problem like letting people go over on him to elevate other, whether it's a younger talent, older. He loves working with people, so I think he wouldn't mind taking a couple losses as long as he gets his wins. To me, I think the main priority for him is he just wants a main event at WrestleMania. I don't think he primarily wants just to like he needs to like a win over Roman to get the belts. Like that'd obviously be excellent if he got that opportunity. But I think for him, he just wants to get that under his belt, like get the main event. And Roman Reigns obviously is not going to be anything less than the main event for probably the next 3 to 5 years if he sticks around for that long. So that's where I'm at with it. I think Seth obviously is also going to stick around with WWE. He's not going to jump ship, and they'll get everything worked out.
Yeah, I also think that's more of, I don't know if it's a Roman Reigns thing because, I mean, yeah, he holds those belts hostage. I don't know. I think almost at the end of the day, their intention is to just have one belt. Is what it seems more and more likely. I don't know. It's weird. I think that's more of like a WWE booking problem, or I think that's the most telltale sign that Vince McMahon is doing stuff if Seth Rollins is pissed off because he's the guy that's been blowing the WWE horn the loudest.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. I think that's weird, and I think Vince McMahon does not want to put a title on Seth Rollins. If you remember how uneventful his last world title run was, he had so much heat, and then he got that title, and it was just
disappeared.
bust.
Yeah.
So I don't. Maybe that's I think that's could be some factors in there. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Good
And
point.
it's so like I mean, the guy comes out on Monday Night Raw like last week, and is just basically his segment changes, and they just fucking sing a song, and he leaves. It's so interesting. Like we see how hot he is, but he could get the title, and then the important thing is getting the title, and then the real important thing is how you develop after you get the title as a champion. And you're right. The Seth Rollins run when he beat Brock Lesnar was absolute shit. That was probably the worst Rollins we've gotten in quite some time. Yeah, so we'll see. So the other thing I wanted to mention was the other thing that was mentioned about Seth Rollins was him and Roman Reigns both said they wanted to face each other in the main event of WrestleMania next year. I don't see that happening for the simple thought that I think Cody is going to be the guy that beats Roman. And if it happens at SummerSlam, if they swap the titles and if they, have two championships, then maybe it could happen. And, if they somehow take the title off of Roman Reigns during the draft and say you can only keep the Universal title, that's the longest streak you have going, you're going to keep that championship. And then they fight for the other one on the other show, fine. And then you have Seth go over and face him at Mania next year. That's cool too. I wouldn't mind that. But I don't see this happening for Seth Rollins. I think, put it this way, if they have two titles next year, I think Seth will be in a main event. If they don't, I do not think he will be in a main event. Again, and that would be another year wasted of Seth Rollins not main eventing WrestleMania. So, any quick thoughts before we jump off from the news? Or anything I missed?
Mania 40 is going to be Rhodes and Roman number 2.
So
It's gonna
In
we all
50-degree
in
weather.
50-degree weather in Philadelphia.
So-
It's gonna be freezing, probably raining, maybe snow.
Ah,
I got an
not
interesting
rain.
take. I think it's going to be The Rock and Roman Reigns. I think Rock will work WrestleMania 40.
Well,
Sean, you need to get off this already.
Yeah.
here's to hoping, Sean.
It's just, if it was going to happen, it would have happened this year.
That is true.
Exactly right.
You were anticipating. We were there live. You were anticipating that it was going to be The Rock, but he no-showed us.
The Rock, he's not going to cold Philly for
Sean holds on to the
WrestleMania.
nostalgia, I think, a little bit longer than we do because at every Mania we've been at, it's always been someone old is coming. 35
And then they never
with
do.
John Cena. This year it was The Rock.
The one thing that I always think about with Rock too is like, as long as his movie career is going good, he's not going back to wrestling. The only reason he came back last time is because he made like the Tooth Fairy. You know?
Cena even took some jabs at him in that promo about that too.
Exactly.
say.
That's the only reason why he was back.
Yeah, that's valid. So let's switch gears now. We're gonna get into the meat and potatoes, the current Mount Rushmores. Do we want to start with the men's or the women's? What are we feeling first? Let's do the
Women.
women's. Women. Okay.
Yeah,
I
women
heard one
first.
for
I think it's
women.
going to be
Okay.
very similar for the women.
Okay, similar. Okay, so what we'll do is we're gonna go one by one. Dylan, we'll have you start. We're gonna go with the first women on your Mount Rushmore, current WWE or AEW or any other federation, just to be clear as well.
I'm going to have to go with first one, Paige / Soraya.
Okay.
Just for the simple fact that, you know, she really was that first girl in the revolution of women's wrestling, you know, getting the, you know, 2-minute matches off TV and things like that. So, and seeing her back in AEW now, since, you know, all the neck injuries, I mean, she could still go. I mean, they protect her pretty well and don't have her do much, but when she's gone, the first couple times that she's gone, she's been just as good as I remember. So, I mean, I have to go with her. I mean, she's always been great on the mic, great in the ring, and again, orchestrated that whole push of the women's revolution. So, yeah, go with her for my first one.
For me,
Sean, let's go to you next. Yeah.
For me, I'm going to go Becky Lynch. And for both sides of it, her wrestling, as she's gotten older, has improved tremendously. And I think she's the greatest talker for the women of all time. Like, she's the most popular, most over with the crowd. She's very impactful, gets a lot of respect from the legends. Like, she's been in segments with The Rock, did like some TV episodes of Stone Cold Steve Austin, worked with Trish and Lita. Everyone like always gives her flowers. And she's obviously is like one of the most likable superstars. 6-time women's champion, Royal Rumble winner in 2019. I think she was the most valuable person in the triple threat first ever women's WrestleMania at 35. Obviously, Ronda Rousey's a debatable one. That's obviously a close second. But to me, like, she just has like all the tools combined for one of the GOATs in wrestling.
Chris?
I'll get it out of the way. Charlotte Flair. I think.
Out of the way.
I mean, I think Jeremy's gonna have it. Sean's gonna have him. I don't know about Dylan. Dylan's a wild card right now, so I don't know if he'll have Charlotte Flair on there. But
hard to pass up. What, 14 titles?
exactly. So 14 time world champion. She's had main events at WrestleMania. She's pretty much been a champion or a challenger for a title at every WrestleMania she's been in. She's elevated so many women as well, even though we're so sick of seeing everything handed to her because of her name and whatever. She's still one of the most athletically gifted women's wrestlers I've ever seen as well, with some of the stuff that she does. So that's an easy lock for me. Charlotte Flair's first.
And we're gonna go snake style. My first is also Charlotte Flair, and I think that's the easiest one to select. The go to women's wrestling, and I don't think it's close. It's not just about the championships. I think she's the most athletic in terms of full package. Like, of course, like people like Bianca can obviously give her a run for her money. She hasn't done it for long enough, in my opinion. So, Charlotte has gone through many phases where she's changed her status from heel and face. She is not a natural face, so when she is heel, that's when she is at her best. There were times they passed the title to her too many times that were not necessary, but she is firmly number one, and I think there's not many people that can catch her right now. If it is, it's going to be someone obviously probably on this list, but she's had match of the year. She's had a bunch of. She's won the NXT Women's Championship twice. She's not just won the World Championship on the main roster. So, all power to her. I know everyone probably is not big on Charlotte Flair, but I still think she's the best. My next was Becky Lynch. Another easy one for me. Like Sean said, I think she's the best talker. I also think she has been the most over female character when she was the man Becky Lynch first introduced in 2019. And I think in terms of women, that was like the first time I heard like a Stone Cold pop for a women's wrestler. And I think that really like changed the game for them because it just really set them apart. Rather than having those 2-minute matches, they were guaranteed a main event at WrestleMania 35. And it was due to Becky Lynch's stardom. Sean is absolutely correct. She was the most important person in that match. Of course, you had two other people that made it a main event in that quality, but Becky was the reason that was the main event. And Becky's my number 2.
Yeah, number 2 for me is also going to be Becky Lynch. Going off what you guys said, she's probably the most over women's wrestler I've ever heard with a crowd. She can talk on the mic. One of the first ever women's main event of WrestleMania, which was an okay match, but I mean, the build to that was fantastic. And, she's somebody who, when she first started in WWE, I thought she was good. I didn't really understand her at first. And then she kind of came out of nowhere with that man character and just completely took over that division in a time period where women's wrestling was probably at its best. With Bayley coming up, Sasha Banks was on the main roster, Ronda Rousey came into the company as one of the biggest heels I've ever seen, and then Charlotte Flair being the best. So, she came out of nowhere, and she's only gotten better as well. She went, had a baby, came back, won the women's championship, and she's gotten like so much better in ring, I think. And it says a lot for her as her character. So Becky Lynch is number 2 for me.
My number 2, I'm going to go Sasha Banks, a.k.a. Mercedes Moné. And I think currently she is the best wrestler in all of the company. I think what she does technically and is just phenomenal. NXT Women's Champion, 3-time WWE Women's Tag, 6-time Women's Champion all time, and she's the current New Japan Women's Champion, and she's currently holding it down. I understand as far as New Japan, there's going to be a lack of women's competition in there, and that part I understand. Down the line, I do see her coming back to WWE. I think eventually they'll come to terms with her. She was a part of WrestleMania 37, and in my opinion, the greatest WrestleMania women's match of all time against Bianca Belair. And what she can do as a babyface and in terms of a heel, she's very well-rounded. And during the pandemic, she was one of the women that was really holding it down, carrying the company on their back when they were on the Performance Center every week. So Sasha Banks for my number 2.
Yeah, it's really hard not to pick the just flat out copy paste every one of you guys and just do 4 horsewomen. But since nobody dropped this one, I'll say Bayley. Just for accomplishment wise, I how many championships she's won. I think she's Grand Slam Women's tag team champion multiple times, Raw and SmackDown, NXT. So yeah, it's really tough not to say her. And speaking of pandemic stuff, I don't know why I used to love the stuff she did with Michael Cole during the pandemic. I used to love that stuff. It's goofy. I like that. That's the part of pro wrestling I like. Got to be goofy sometimes. And I think she's awesome, man. I think she would do great anywhere. And I think that's another thing that I was wanting to think about. How would they do it in place A, B, or C? And I think she would be successful anywhere she went. So, yeah, Bayley for sure for me for number 2. Number 3, I'll also go Sasha Banks. Then Mercedes Moné. She's the bomb. I would say in the ring, the best wrestler, women's wrestler, pound for pound.
Great
for
job.
Sure. I mean, and the way and the way that I can prove that is the fact that, like I said, she's done it now in WWE and in New Japan and Stardom's, where honestly the best in-ring women's work gets done there. So she's killing the game. Gotta have her up there for sure as my number 3.
My number three, I'm gonna go Charlotte Flair based on like all the accomplishments, and I do think she is top two. I got Sasha's number one wrestling, but I think Charlotte Flair is right behind her at number two. So I will give her props there. She's excellent. She's very well rounded. One of the best athletes. Her and Bianca Belair are probably the two most well rounded athletically, CrossFit wise, like strength wise. Grand Slam champion. She's a Triple Crown champion. 2018 Match of the Year against against Becky Lynch. Two-time NXT champion, and she was PWI Feud of the Year in 2016 against Sasha. And even at this year's WrestleMania against Rhea Ripley, put on an absolute banger of a match, and that is also a very debatable greatest women's match ever, at least at the bare minimum top three. So Charlotte Flair for my number three spot.
My third spot is also going to be Mercedes Moné or Sasha Banks. She's somebody who came into WWE as, the boss. She was such a great heel. I think she's a much better heel than she is a face. She gets a much better reaction as that. But she's somebody who like we've seen, she can go into multiple companies, win multiple championships. She's one of the best talkers of all time as well. And like you said, Sean, probably the greatest women's WrestleMania match of all time. And it was in the main event against one of the best athletes that I've ever seen in a women's division, like of all time as well. So Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks, another accomplishment. She just got to meet the Mount Rushmore Wrestling podcast WrestleMania weekend as well. What's better than that? Shout out Mercedes.
Shout out Mercedes.
She put me on her story as well, so had to put her on the spot. So Mercedes number three.
Yeah, my number three and number four, I went with the four horsewomen for my four Mount Rushmore pieces. I don't think you can not have one of them in there. So my number three is Mercedes Moné. I think that for my honorable mentions, there'll be a couple interesting ones, and I think that can potentially get over that hump. It'll be interesting once their careers are done, but they're so young. So everything that they said for Mercedes and for Bayley, I think those two could potentially be the best women's match ever. Is their NXT match between Bayley and Sasha Banks. So I think you have to include both of them because leaving one of them out, it just doesn't sit right with me when they're talking about they all came up seemingly together. I know Bayley was a little bit lagged behind, but they were really the foundation of that movement of women's wrestling that, a lot of people put down the foundation for them to kind of break through that ceiling and that glass door and, really put women's wrestling on the map. So Mercedes Moné and Bayley are my last two. I won't go into the details they've already said.
Yeah, my fourth is also going to be Bayley as well. I had to go with the four horsewomen. I feel like it wouldn't sit right with me either, leaving one of them off. And like you said, there's honorable mentions that could crack that surface at some point. And I think, honestly, very much will. But as far as right now in today's day and age, you have to have all four on. They were the four pillars, basically, of women's wrestling in NXT, and then came up on the main roster and completely took over the business. And like we said, Bayley, maybe she has done a little bit less than the other three, but she still over with the crowd. She's won world championships. She's probably won the most tag team championships as well. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm just guessing.
Just to give you some stats on Bayley quickly. Yeah. So one-time NXT Women's Champion, one-time Raw Women's Champion, two-time SmackDown Women's Champion, two-time Tag Team Women's Champion with Sasha Banks, Money in the Bank, Triple Crown, Grand Slam, Feud of the Year. She's had quite a lot that are unexpected. She's had just as much as the others. Obviously not as many title reigns, but foundationally still some incredible achievements.
Yeah, and honestly, even for us to put her on that Mount Rushmore knowing she hasn't been over as much as the other three says a lot for what we see in her potential in the business. I don't think creative's done a good job with her whatsoever because she's definitely could have been in more main events or, women's championship matches at WrestleManias.
Never had a singles match at WrestleMania.
Never.
That's crazy.
Which
Always
is
been
insane.
In multi-woman matches.
Absolutely insane, considering Asuka's probably only had singles matches and lost everything.
Yeah, lost them.
Yeah. I'm still not over
and
that,
she's
by the
lost
way.
Them all.
Still not over that, by the way. But,
game purposes only, though.
For Bayley definitely is number 4, so that's my women's Mount Rushmore current.
My number four, this was my surprising pick to you guys, so I think that you'd be shocked with it. I picked Bianca Belair. Even though she's very young into like the main roster career, I think she's done enough, including her NXT run as well, to be in that list because I think she's the most well-rounded athlete currently in the company. 2021 Royal Rumble winner, SmackDown Women's Champion. She's a current Raw Women's Champion. In 2021, she was ranked number one out of 150 best women's wrestler by PWI, and she was Female Wrestler of the Year by ESPN in 2022. And I just think every match she's in, I can't even recall a bad match that Bianca has ever been in. And like you guys said about Bailey, I do think creative has like kind of botched what she's been doing as far as like a baby face, and I think we're all in agreement. I'm not sure, Dylan, if you have any thoughts on Bianca Belair, whether you think she's better as a baby face or a heel, but we personally love her as a heel, like she was in NXT. She's 3-0 at WrestleMania. She defeated like the Sasha Banks. She beat Becky Lynch, and then she just beat three of the best in ring. So maybe we're on our way to an Undertaker, like undefeated. Who knows?
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think with her, I think it's so cool how quickly she's kind of caught on the main roster. Because, I mean, I don't know if it was like around the pandemic when, she wasn't getting used. She was coming out with the Street Profits, kind of like, hey, just shoving her along. And as soon as she hit the, the actual win streak there and they started booking her well, I mean, she's been taken off. So, yeah, my last one, I mean, I guess you guys have kind of already shared the stuff, but it's Becky. She is the man for a reason. She can take a punch and just wear it, and she is the man. I mean, I think she's gotten that much better too. Obviously, she trains with Seth, I would imagine, and I think it shows in the last few years with them, kind of being super public with their relationship and stuff, and it's crazy how much better she's gotten even since she's taken on that man moniker. But yeah, that'd be my number four. I did have a couple honorable mentions.
Yeah.
I had, kind of like Sean, I was going to toss up Bianca Belair on there too because she's been awesome the last couple years especially. Rhea Ripley would be another one. Just hasn't been doing it long enough, but I mean, she's won world titles, NXT, Royal Rumbles. I mean, she's checked all the boxes of being there. It's just, longevity at this point. So she would be another one of mine. And another one that I was thinking about just for being in the business for a while and never getting any accomplishments, would want to kind of give her flowers, would be like Ruby Riott, Ruby Soho, because she can go. She can have really good matches, and it's crazy to me. I think because she doesn't have that like commercial like sex appeal for like women, which is kind of like faux pas for women's wrestling, but like it's something that people think about. She's never been a world champion, but she can go in the ring, man, and she can cut a decent promo too.
She should have beat Charlotte Flair. That match was incredible, but she should have beat her at that time because Ruby was actually probably as over as she was ever going to be in WWE.
She should have maybe beat Britt Baker when she debuted in AEW if they wanted to build her up quick.
Yep.
I mean, that sucks to say because I love Britt, but she should have probably beat her.
Yes.
Sean, how about you for honorable mentions?
Two, I picked Bailey. I couldn't leave her off any list. Bailey's very important. I'm still shocked by the status. She has never had a singles WrestleMania match. That's got to change going to 40, or it's just like, what are we doing here? I think Bailey is excellent as a heel rather than a babyface. I know a lot of people loved how she was back in her NXT days in her early WWE career as like Happy Bailey. I personally like her as a heel. I just think creative completely just ruined what Damage Control and all the momentum that they had going. But she is one of the best wrestlers in the game. She's had excellent thrillers with Charlotte, Sasha, Becky. Like she can go in that ring, and she's very entertaining. Like I remember her talk show. She's like "Ding dong," like little stuff like that is just entertaining. It's funny. And then my other one, like Dylan mentioned, Rhea Ripley. These probably the most over of the women right now, and just like the hottest light that's like sparked it quickly. Like Judgment Day developed. I remember we were having that conversation of like who's the leader of the crew. Now I think it's clear cut. It's Rhea Ripley, and I don't think it's close. If people want to say maybe Dominic down the line, okay, but I still think it's Rhea Ripley for like the importance that she brings. One of the most powerful like women in the roster, great athlete, put on an absolute thriller, like we just mentioned, with Charlotte at this year's WrestleMania, and she's got a hell of a career waiting ahead of her.
Yeah,
Poor Finn Balor.
Poor Finn Balor, I know. for
So
uh,
true.
for my two, I have Rhea and Bianca, two who are locks for probably honorable mentions or on people's Mount Rushmores. Bianca being the greatest athlete I've ever seen, Rhea turning into one of the greatest characters I've ever seen. Those two definitely deserve a nod for that. But something else I want to mention is somebody who I just brought up a little while ago is Asuka. I'm not having her as an honorable mention. Maybe if she did win some of those WrestleMania matches, maybe if she did win more world titles. She had one of the longest undefeated streaks of all time. She had a great run in NXT. She's fantastic in the ring as well. She's somebody who also potentially, if was booked better, would definitely deserve a spot to be an honorable mention as far as this topic. So she's another one.
Yeah, I'm following suit with just about everybody. I do have one other one. But Rhea and Bianca are both the up and comers that I would see taking those spots potentially to the max. I think both of them have, you could potentially push 8 or 9 time, 10-time champion for either one of them, and I would buy it right now over the next, 10 years, however long they go, of like their prime. So I think they could be even more than that. Who knows? The one other person I'd like to mention, her name did float around in one of our, maybe it was by Dylan, Britt Baker. I think Britt Baker could be an honorable mention, and there should be a lot to be said about. She seems to be the foundational woman of what AEW women's wrestling was about, and kind of holds that mantle. And you see, I don't know if people watch the All Access show, but you see how much also behind the scenes, how much she cares about the women in AEW, and kind of, I think, holds that leadership opportunity for herself and holds herself to a higher standard to set that standard for women's wrestling in AEW. So I think she's someone that could go down on a Mount Rushmore, specifically because what she does for this company. In 15 years, when AEW's 18 years old, however it may be, we'll look back and say, that was one of the pioneers for AEW, for all elite wrestling. So I want to include Britt Baker in there.
And Britt Baker easily could hang with any of the girls we just mentioned in WWE as well.
Yeah,
she's been squashed by a couple of them.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting though. Like, if you put Britt Baker in WWE right now, I do think she has the ability and the character to go with just about anyone. What I'll say is I do think some of WWE's wrestlers are a little bit better in terms of quality of wrestling. Not to downgrade Britt, but Britt's maybe like the third or fourth best potentially if she comes over to WWE. She is firmly the best in AEW. I don't know what Dylan has to say about that, but don't sell me on Jade Cargill.
I think she's only as good.
I think
she's only as good as the people she wrestles. She really. I think she's. I think she's slow when she's wrestling 21-year-old Sky Blue or something like that. Or
yep.
I think she's as good as they go. Because those couple matches. Granted, I love like the blood and guts stuff too.
Yeah.
Shout out Vince McMahon. I really liked all her Thunder Rosa matches, even though they hate each other.
100%. I think it made it better that they hated each other.
Exactly. That's why, CM Punk and the Elite and FTR should all do business. But, I digress. But yeah. I think she's as good as the people she fights.
I also like
and the thing
about Access show that, like to Jeremy's point, that Britt really cares. And you can see on a lot of the clips, they were showing like how she wanted her and Saraya to deliver an absolute killer promo, and that as soon as that was over, it's like now we just got delivered during the match. So I love that Britt's getting a lot of airtime for All Access, and she's definitely one of the pioneers of AEW.
All the girls that we just mentioned, though, need to watch out for NXT.
Yeah,
they are developing some of the best athletes I've seen in the ring.
100%.
A lot of killers.
They have some. They're gonna have some full package women. Tiffany Stratton. Sol Ruka needs to develop on the mic and that type of thing, but her athleticism is off the charts. Roxanne Perez, if that's your forte, I still think she's, she's the prodigy. That's her character. She's a little too small, but, who knows? They can sell me on that. Rey Mysterio sold me on too small when I was young in whatever the fuck I was watching, like 2002, 2003. Rey Mysterio sold me on that. So she could be the Rey Mysterio for women and be an incredible in-ring talent, messing around with the bigger women, and I think that would be a great story.
I think Roxanne, you could almost have put Roxanne on like an honorable mention to the fact that like she's had such a crazy last year.
Yeah.
She was what, Ring of Honor Women's Champion. She
Yep.
won that Ring of Honor tournament, if I'm not mistaken. And then coming into NXT, it's like, I mean, what a crazy year for her. And she's what, 21?
Yeah.
I think
She's so.
best
That's
tech
the other thing. These people are so young
right now currently.
They're just, and they have so much just
What-
young talent.
What did you guys think about Cora Jade pretty much copying AJ Lee's promo?
Yeah,
I didn't-
interesting.
Word
So,
for
Chris,
word.
I didn't see that promo yet, but I do plan on watching that. So
Oh,
I'll
okay.
definitely.
Just
I'll
one
get
part
back-
of it. Just one part of it.
I'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah.
It's like identical.
Yeah.
Shout out to AJ Lee. You know, represent. I always was a big AJ Lee fan when she did wrestle. She just obviously didn't do it for long enough. So let's transition here. This is a good spot to transition. Let's go to our men. I think this one was a little bit more challenging to kind of pick 4 names, and it'll be interesting to see where people go with how we kind of decided this. But Dylan, let's start with you again, and we're going to go with the first gentleman on the Mount Rushmore for men.
Gonna have to go. I mean, for me, it's an obvious one. Like we said earlier, I'm a big Kenny Omega guy. So Kenny Omega is the man. Kind of helped bring me back into wrestling a little bit when I was out of it. Just seeing all the clips of him when he was in New Japan, tearing it up with, you know, the likes of Ibushi and Okada, and then getting that Chris Jericho rub too. Yeah, I love Kenny Omega. You know, even since he's come to AEW, I think it took a little bit for the American fans to get on him a little bit, and then him kind of get used to TV wrestling. But he's adjusted super quick. He's had great matches, and he's done things that you wouldn't have thought he would do prior to him coming to AEW. I mean, all the stuff with Mox and death matches and barbed wire, all that stuff. It's been awesome. So I think Kenny Omega for me is kind of, I hope not a no-brainer, but I mean, I would say I think it's a no-brainer because the dude can go and he can cut a great promo. He can really go.
Sure.
I mean, some of the stuff that he even does after, like a couple of AEW shows that I've been to where he's done work after too, where he comes out and cuts a good promo. He's a cool guy. Big anime guy too, so little anime rub there. But yeah, so Kenny Omega, my number one.
My number one, I'm gonna go the Legend Killer Randy Orton. And I look at, there's so many things to say about Randy Orton. All right, first of all, the longevity. The guy's been doing it since 2002. All the factions he's been a part of, like the importance that he's been developed by, like he got breeded by Triple H with Evolution. Then he transitioned into a solo act as a Legend Killer, taking out, feuding with The Undertaker, all those legends. Then he transitioned to a heel, like a hardcore heel at the Age of Orton, where he was absolutely ruthless. And, like, he makes you believe every promo he cuts. Like, I even wonder, like, is he actually going to legitimately kill somebody? Because of how, like, serious he is when he cuts promos. Wrestling-wise, I think he also is one of the most well-paced wrestlers. He's not a Kenny Omega in terms of, like, fast-paced and can do the electrical stuff. But he's methodical enough where he can last a long time. And he's had some excellent matches with the likes of Undertaker, John Cena, Triple H. He's had all these like feuds down the line, and I think of like all the storylines he's been a part of, like that's importance to me. So I had to have him on the list. 14-time world champion and 20 total championships. So he's got the combination of the championships and accolades along with like the storylines.
My first, gotta go with the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. Everything he's done in the past 3 years has been fantastic. I don't want to mention anything before that, even though I was a big Roman Reigns fan for a very long time since he came into the business. But I mean, that man right now is untouchable. He's gotten so much better on the mic, so much better in the ring, and that might have to do that he's been facing some great opponents that really helped him elevate himself. But I mean, that's an easy pick for me. I think he was voted number 1 last year by PWI as well. He's gone on one of the longest reigns in, 30 years or 40 years, 50 years, whatever it is, with those world championships. So I think that's an easy pick for me. He's another guy who I really think can go with anybody at this point in his career. He's not, like I said, the most gifted in the ring, but he makes up for it with just his persona, his promo work. He's the guy right now. So number one for me has got to be Roman Reigns.
Number one for me, I also actually had Kenny Omega. I think Kenny Omega has had now only 3 years in front of an American crowd, but the things that he did beforehand do need to be mentioned in this time. Just in his AEW accomplishments, he's been world champion, he's been tag team champion, he's been two-time trios champion, and the matches. That's the thing about AEW for Kenny. Like, he's put on just as good as matches as I expected from him watching his New Japan matches. So his accomplishments in New Japan are just off the charts as well. He's been IWGP Heavyweight Champion, Intercontinental Champion, Junior Heavyweight Tag, United States. It goes on and on. He's the current IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion. It's Kenny is exactly like the leader of a company that you need in terms of like his wrestling ability and overall character. And I think that's what he gives AEW, and that's why I think he would be such a big loss if they were to ever lose him. I think he still doesn't get enough credit, I think, from the American fans for being on the likes of a Seth Rollins or or Roman Reigns, someone that's more in the limelight. Maybe in PWI and things like that, he gets credit where it's deserved, right? But, to the everyday fan, like AEW doesn't have as much reach as WWE. So I think he still doesn't get in front of enough eyes to appreciate all the shit that he's done. Like when he was out for like those 9 or 10 months when he couldn't wrestle, that really sucked, to be quite frank, because we finally got Kenny Omega on our televisions and then we lost him for so long. And then they got suspended. So it was like, we got to take it away again. But for me, Kenny Omega is definitely on the current Mount Rushmore in terms of his ability. I think he really is the full package. My second, I'll get it over with, Roman Reigns, Tribal Chief. It's tough not to include him, especially for over the past 3 years of what he's done. The accomplishments are great. He just had his best match, I think, of his career, and especially at WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes. And his character really is, I don't like to say untouchable, but it's just about as untouchable as it can be in terms of how good that fucking gimmick is. I just can't get it through my head that watching it. It's like, I feel like if I was live watching Stone Cold and The Rock back in the day, if I was able to see them in person like I've been able to see Roman, I would think the same thing. But when I see Roman like in front of me, like walking down that ramp, it's exactly what I said on our WrestleMania review. That is a star. So, it like I said, it would be the same thing if that was Rock or Austin back in the day. So hats off to Roman. He's on my current Mount Rushmore.
Good pick, Jeremy. My second is Kenny Omega as well. And something interesting that you guys keep saying is, if something's not done on American soil, it seems to go very unnoticed. And that is where he spent most of his career, was not here. It was elsewhere in other promotions. And he was the best then, and he's the best now in the promotion that he's in. If you're going to sculpt a perfect superstar, it's Kenny Omega. He can go in any generation, I think, past, present, future, whatever's to come, he can go. You could see him go with Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Undertaker, anybody in that generation. And then you can...
God, I don't want to imagine. Think about it. It gets me too excited.
Exactly. And then, he can go with guys now in the company that he's in, like John Moxley. He could go with, obviously, CM Punk. He's a little bit older. MJF, Darby Allin, some of the younger guys. He just went with Will Ospreay in one of the best matches. And that was for the United States Championship, which he won, which is crazy. So, I mean, Kenny Omega, that's an easy one for me. That's an absolute lock.
For me, my number 2 is my favorite superstar currently. It is
Sean.
It is Roman Reigns as my number 2.
Can you not hear us?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
All right, Dylan, go to you. Oh, shit.
Can you guys hear me?
Okay, cool. Go ahead, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good, okay. Now. Yeah, my number 2 is Roman Reigns. And if you look at, before he became the Tribal Chief, he went through the ringer when he was a babyface. He had some killer matches back in the day when they were really pushing him to that like echelon main event spot. He's had all the accomplishments you could ask for, like Royal Rumble, 7-time Slammy Award winner, U.S. Intercontinental Belt, 6-time World Champion. Now, on the bloodline aspect, the last 3 years have been some of the most memorable stuff and material that I've ever seen come out of Roman Reigns. The level of importance that he generates, like he's the most polarizing superstar. All he needs to do is go out there, whatever city they're in, say they're in Boston. Boston, acknowledge me. He just draws heat or praise. He even gets a lot of cheers. We were at WrestleMania 39, and it was a combination of cheers and boos. Like Jeremy mentioned, he had to me his greatest match at this current WrestleMania 39 against Cody, and the guy just gets better and better with like what he's doing on the mic, his wrestling. When he wants to go and work with somebody that really gets him up, like sky's the limit with Roman Reigns. So that's my number 2.
Don't forget, it's only the third inning.
Man be counting his fucking slammies. Get the
so
fuck
many.
out of here with 7 slammies.
I wanted to go ahead and say Roman Reigns is not going to be on mine. Just because I'm going to go
get him off the show.
I'm going to lean in-ring ability. I'm going to lean in-ring ability here, and I really think his matches are really copy-paste to a certain extent. Like, please put me through the guardrail. Like, it's the typical thing. So mine's, my Mount Rushmore, probably because AEW is a little less story heavy, and that's all, been my thing is in-ring stuff. It's going to be more in-ring. So my number 2, while his career is kind of winding down right now, and he's out with injury since Sean went Randy Orton, I'm going to go AJ Styles.
It's AJ.
Yeah. So AJ Styles is the man. Done it in multiple companies, kind of like the Kenny thing, right? I mean, TNA, X Division stuff, Ultimate X, God, he was in the main event, Mafia, all this stuff. Think about the people that guy's wrestled with over the last 20 years. I mean, so many people he's rubbed. And then even when he decides, you know what, forget TNA, I'm going to we'll go work New Japan and Ring of Honor and stuff. He goes and takes over for Finn Balor and runs the Bullet Club and gives the ultimate rub on his way out to Kenny Omega, who then got his big bump doing that. So comes to WWE, everybody's like, cool, he's making money, he's probably not going to win a world title. Somehow convinced Vince McMahon to give him a world title multiple times.
Too, really.
Multiple times. So it's really hard not to say AJ Styles because he can go in the ring, can cut a promo. God, he's just done so much. It just seems like kind of, again, one of those ones where it's hard to say otherwise and not put him on there. I mean, he's developed his stuff so much and reinvented himself as the years have gone on, too. I mean, some of those moves that he used to do in TNA were wild, and nobody even tries them these days. So, yeah, AJ Styles is going to be my number 2.
And Dylan, we'll go to you again. We'll
okay.
Come back on the snake.
For sure. So number 3 for me, again, it's more in-ring, but then also doing it other places. So I'm going to go Jon Moxley / Dean Ambrose, just for the sole fact, again, I mean, the accomplishments in both companies. If both of these billion, I guess probably not billion in AEW, but both of these big companies want to put the world title and make him be the, so-called face of the company in that sense, or the figurehead, it's really hard for me not to say that person's not a current day Mount Rushmore person. So, and him going in there to AEW and being just that much better, and for legacy's sake of just a whole resume, I mean, the Shield as a whole, like, those guys were awesome, and him being a part of that adds to his legacy. So Jon Moxley for me, I don't have all the stats as far as, world titles for WWE, but I mean, he's the only 3-time AEW champion, so that's a big deal. Yep. So Jon Moxley for me, number 3.
Just quickly, Jon Moxley, I'll give you a few stats as I'm pulling them up here. For AEW, 3-time world champion, interim world champion 1 time.
Interim.
Stupid title. So for World Championships, he's won the WWE Championship 1 time, Intercontinental Championship 3 times, 2 time Raw Tag, United States as a Triple Crown, uh, the 8th Grand Slam champion, Money in the Bank, a lot of
He's
stuff
done it all.
for WWE
Exactly.
as well.
And best friends of trees.
My number 3, I am going to also go Kenny Omega. This criteria is specifically who is the best in-ring wrestler. I think Kenny by far, and it's not close in my opinion. If he were to come to WWE like when he was younger and didn't do New Japan, I think he would surpass Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle. That's how great I think Kenny is. With the move sets he has, all the like the snap suplexes, the V trigger, like he's so well rounded. He has all the tools at his disposal of whatever he wants to pull out in a match. His New Japan stuff, some of the Okada matches he had, some of like the most perfection like quality matches you've ever seen. What he's doing AEW on the business side, being an EVP with the Young Bucks, and what they do as a trio together. I just think he's so well rounded and very underrated on the microphone too. When he wants to cut promos, I think he's very good. So Kenny Omega for my number 3.
My number 3, Sean, I don't think you're gonna like this. It's Brian
Ooh.
Danielson. So
Ooh.
I have Brian Danielson on my current Mount Rushmore. He's another guy who's been in so many different promotions as well. You know, he's been wrestling for 20 plus years. He's probably the best technical wrestler in all of wrestling right now. He's been in main events of WrestleMania. Now he's doing it in AEW. I am absolutely shocked he has not won that AEW World Championship yet. He's had multiple matches for it, lost every single time. I can't
Wrong
believe
place,
it.
wrong time.
Wrong place,
times.
wrong time, exactly. And he's a guy who also could come back to WWE at some point and still wrestle there at the end of his career because he's really a guy that's never talked bad about WWE. He's always had such good things to say about it. And, you know, it was heartbreaking when he went through that injury. So when he came back from that neck injury, it was so sweet to see him again at WrestleMania, even though it was a tag team match. And then, you know, he won another world championship after that, lost it to Kofi Kingston at WrestleMania. But he's another guy who's just absolutely done it all. I don't have all of his accomplishments in front of me, but I just know with my eyes, he is on the current Mount Rushmore top 4 best in the business right now.
Funny you say that, Chris. So interesting. Next on my list is Brian Danielson. Brian Danielson, for me, the biggest argument I have between him and a guy on my honorable mentions would be Seth Rollins. Danielson has done it in the main event of WrestleMania. Seth Rollins has been obviously the heist of the century, and you know he was technically involved in that main event. Danielson has now done it in 2 companies and proved he is just as good or better than he has ever been. He left the company after one of the best triple threat matches at WrestleMania with Edge and Roman Reigns, and they added him to that match to spice up the wrestling. And boy, did him and Edge deliver in that match, and I thought they brought the best out of Roman in that match as well. And for me, Danielson is I don't think it's close for this either. You know, some other people will say like Zack Sabre Jr. or someone like that. He is the best technical wrestler in wrestling these days. And I think if you ask wrestlers, they would say the same thing because Seth Rollins himself put Danielson on the Mount Rushmore of all time in terms of wrestling and in-ring ability. He put Danielson on there. So for me, Brian Danielson, maybe that's a biased pick and a homer pick, but I'll take that on the chin and I'll be fine with it. Just to read off some of his accomplishments, 4-time WWE champion, 1-time world heavyweight. So a 5-time world champion is actually a lot more than I think people think. Intercontinental, U.S., tag team, SmackDown tag team, Money in the Bank winner. Should have won the Royal Rumble for fuck's sake. Absolutely stupid. Match of the year in 2019 against Kofi Kingston, one of the best runs as a heel he's had was that run with Kofi Kingston. And that burger, I still think about that burger at Royal Rumble that he was fed up with people about Planet Earth. The hemp belt was so great with Brian Danielson. And then my last, so he's number 3. My last is AJ Styles. Another bias pick, and I don't give a fuck about it. AJ Styles, to me, he is on the older side, but he is still someone that I could go to if I need a main event match. I am guaranteeing that it's going to be good. AJ Styles is involved with it. So for me, AJ Styles is that 4th. his accomplishments really speak for themselves. I will read a few. His TNA stuff, he was heavyweight champion 3 times, tag team champion 4 times. He was the Triple Crown TNA champion, Grand Slam champion, did everything in TNA and did win multiple world titles in WWE. His feud with Cena made me rethink how good of a wrestler John Cena was, and that was because of AJ Styles. And he did that
Better
for
than
a
Bryan
few
Danielson?
people, and he elevated them even best. It's a debatable thing. Not at this point, right? So he's not a better wrestler at this point. But if you ask me, like in his prime, probably yes, I'd probably go AJ over Danielson. It's close, but AJ has that again, like Kenny. I think those are very good comps. AJ may be a little bit more high flying than Kenny, but yeah, AJ Styles as my fourth.
So my fourth is somebody who's, I think, probably just getting started, but probably in my eyes, the best wrestler that I've ever seen, and I've only seen one of his matches live, and that's going to be Will Ospreay.
I was going to say, is it Will
Oh,
Ospreay?
nice.
I think that this guy has just so much to offer, even in the future. I don't know how long he's been doing it. I really don't know that much about him. I've just seen his highlights. I saw the one live match at I forget, the Forbidden Door, was it, with Orange Cassidy, and just
He's
based
the
off that
younger
match,
Kenny Omega.
yeah, he's 29 years old.
He's a
He's not
young
even 30
Kenny.
yet, and just based off that one live match that I've ever seen, I'm like, wow, this might be the greatest wrestler in ring, gifted athlete that I have ever seen. And I have seen his promos. He's great on the mic as well. He can cut a damn good promo.
Leads his own faction now as well.
Yeah, what is it? The Aussie
United
Empire. That's what it is.
Yep.
So yeah, see, I don't even know that much about him, but he's on my Mount Rushmore because I know what he has to offer in the future and what I've seen based off of his highlights. So I got Will Ospreay.
My number 4, I went with Seth Rollins. I think in WWE, he's the best current wrestler within that company. Ranked number 1 wrestler in the top 500 in 2015 and 2019. So I think that says a lot about him, that no matter like even the gap in between, he still is very consistent. He was a Money in the Bank winner in 2014, 4-time world champion. He won a Rumble. Everything kind of speaks out from what he does. He's been a part of many great feuds with, John Cena, Roman, AJ Styles. He just finished up with Logan Paul. So they can bring in part-timers and celebrities, and Seth is willing to work with them and put on absolutely classic matches. Going to Jeremy's point about Bryan Danielson with the main events, I think unfortunately Seth is just in Roman Reigns' era where that's just kind of preventing him from that next part, unfortunately. So if he was never in Roman Reigns' era, I think Roman would be out of the discussion. Like if he was out in AEW, Seth Rollins would be in probably 8 or 9 WrestleMania main events because of how talented he is and how he carries the whole company. Storyline wise on the mic, whether he's a baby face, he goes out there, the crowd loves his theme music, we sing along to it. When he's a heel, he's absolutely cutthroat and no lengths that he won't go to on that one. So Seth Rollins for my final one.
Man, that's it's really tough. Like I have Danielson as mine. It's really tough because like again, I really put a lot of weight into in ring and just doing it in multiple places. So I mean, you guys have said pretty much everything to be said about him. The one thing that I guess I could add just for AEW little part of it is absolutely loved his match with Moxley at Revolution last year. That match was a banger, and I really wish we could have got more Moxley, Regal, Danielson. Just those guys. Don't get me wrong. I love Yuta. I love Claudio. Wish you could have got more of that. But yeah, Danielson being my number 4. Honorable mentions. I could do a whole bunch of New Japan guys, realistically, because, again, like kind of what Chris was saying about just seeing the highlights of these guys and the things that they do. And, I mean, if you go look up Golden Lovers tag team matches, which is Kenny and Kota Ibushi, oh, my God.
Unbelievable.
They're just ridiculous. So, I mean, he is like the Japanese incarnation of Kenny. And I do believe that in some way, like, if they could get it where Kenny and Kota could do something again, that would be sick. Another one of mine would be Jay White. He's been awesome. last couple years. Been awesome. Running New Japan. He's like the biggest gaijin, Japanese person out there running it, and recently signed with AEW. Excited to see what he does. I was telling Chris earlier, I hope he somehow works his way into beating Orange Cassidy for that international title and kind of building up prestige for that.
See that.
Bullet Club Gold, I guess. We'll see.
Ooh, yeah.
So I have two honorable mentions. I do have Bryan Danielson on there as an honorable mention. Being objective, like you can't take away for like the in-ring ability. And going back to like 2014, what Sami Zayn is right now, as far as over with the crowd, that was exactly the second coming of what Bryan Danielson was back when he was Daniel Bryan in 2014. WrestleMania 30, that whole entire year, I remember Batista won that Royal Rumble. The whole crowd was booing him out of the building that Bryan Danielson didn't win that Royal Rumble. Eventually, he did insert himself. He faced Triple H in it was 2 matches at that Mania. Beat Triple H, was in one of the classic matches, and then he had the triple threat later that night, won the belt, and then just so over with the crowd. Like you guys said, one of the most technical wrestlers, probably top 5 of all time, technical-wise. He's definitely very impactful. He's in AEW right now. I am also shocked he has not won the AEW belt yet, which is a shocker. But maybe down the line, depending on how long he wants to continue doing it, we will see that. My second honorable mention is AJ Styles. And I think you can even make the case that you can say maybe he's still the best current wrestler for WWE. So maybe I personally have Seth Rollins, but I think AJ is a close second. But there was a long period of time where he was holding down the company, and it wasn't even close. He was a clear cut for at least a good 7-8 year stretch where he was the number one guy in ring. The Styles Clash, the phenomenal forearm, like he has a great moveset. And talking to legends, like I remember Michelle McCool wanted Undertaker to work with AJ because of how safe of a worker he was. And that's very telling that not only are you that talented, but you can protect the legends when need be, because I think that's very important for like respect amongst your peers. And AJ just brings in, and the TNA accomplishments. I know like Chris and Jeremy already like talked about a couple already. I don't have to go down that list, but TNA accomplishments, he was just lights out when he was back at young AJ Styles in his prime. So those are my 2.
So there was just like a few older guys like I wanted to mention that I didn't have on mine personally, which was AJ Styles is one of them. Basically, I didn't add them just because they are a little bit older personally. So Randy Orton, AJ Styles, and Chris Jericho. These 3 guys easily have arguments to be on the all-time Mount Rushmore as well as the current, which is incredible to say. But the 2 guys that I wanted to mention that are a little bit younger, one is Seth Rollins. I did not have him on mine. If Roman Reigns wasn't hand-fed everything, like I'm a huge Roman fan, obviously, he's my favorite. But I know he's been hand-fed everything. Seth Rollins is naturally better than him on the mic, naturally better than him in the ring. Seth Rollins, it's true though.
Spoon-fed.
It's true though. I mean, I'm just being honest. Seth Rollins is better than Roman Reigns, I think, in every way possible. But creative decided to go a different way. And at first, it all seemed like everything was going to go to Seth Rollins. When he cashed in the Money in the Bank, he had the U.S. title and the WWE Championship. He was facing John Cena, Sting, so many people. And then, they had to give Roman the golden shovel, as they say to some people, and bury people. So I got Seth Rollins. Another guy, I don't know, maybe it's too early, MJF. I wanted to mention MJF. I love what he's done in the ring. He's gotten so much better in the ring. He's probably the biggest heel in all of wrestling right now as well. And he's probably one of the best guys, if not the best guy on the mic in all of wrestling as well. And I think that goes a long way. Promo work does a lot for me personally. So I had to throw MJF in there as well.
So like them, I do have a couple. I actually have a few very similar. So I had Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, so enough has been said about them. A couple other guys I want to mention. We talk about New Japan. Okada should probably be mentioned in this list just because he is like that stepping stone final boss for most people in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I think he deserves some credit here as is really like when you look back, Kenny was made great, but he was also in the ring with someone that was just so incredible. So he needs to be mentioned. And Will Ospreay again, I'll mention him again. Those 2 stand out to me as some of the best products of Japan. And I will agree, Jay White was a huge miss for WWE because of not only the in-ring ability, but the charisma that he has. I texted this to the group last night when I was watching AEW. Huge loss. The absolute. I just think there's an aura about Jay White in most of his promos that you don't get with everyone, and he just has that it when he's talking. Like MJF has it, but it's just a little bit different for me with Jay White. He's just something about him just sticks out to me. So incredible stuff from him. But yeah, that wraps up our Mount Rushmore current men and women. I think what we'll do now is, we'll sign off. But I do want to thank Dylan for being on the show, and
thanks for
maybe
having me.
we'll be able to have you back. Maybe we'll do a AW Double or Nothing predictions or a review of the show if you'd like to come back for one of those. That would be great, and we can kind of make you an annual AEW guest from time to time if we have any heated debates coming up for AEW. But thank you so much again. We really appreciate you having you on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, man. I appreciate it. Let me know when you guys want to do something else.
It's a pleasure, Dylan. Nice to meet you, man.
Awesome.
Nice talking with you guys.
All right, y'all. This wraps up episode 22. We appreciate you. Again, follow us on all social media, MR Wrestling Pod, and keep following the YouTube. And yeah, thanks for another good episode. All right, you all have a good one.